Everyone, my name is Tanisha, and I am here in the Plaid Content Studios. And today I'm going to be teaching you how to create this cute little woodland wreath. So I want to give a couple little announcements before we start. One, if you have any issues or you have any questions, go ahead and type it out in the chat. And Dylan, who's sitting at a different computer, will let me know if there's any questions or you need me to go back. Two, I wanted to make sure that everyone received the pattern. So this is the pattern for the painting, and we were a little late in putting it up. There must have been a glitch and it didn't end up in the original posting for the class. So if you haven't downloaded this and printed it, go ahead and do that now. I will try to move slowly so that you have time to do that. But if you have this, that's great. We're going to use transfer paper to transfer it onto our canvas once we have our base coat down. So you have a couple minutes here to go ahead and print this out. You can sketch it out as well. You just won't get that perfect circle. Not a huge deal, but I just wanted to let you guys know that this was sent to you via email, and I believe that it is also going to be in the chat to download. So we can go ahead and go to the overhead. And as you can see, whoops, I'm losing hair. As you can see, this is a cute little woodland wreath, and it's customizable with a name. So I just used a simple name. If your last name is longer or you want to put something else in there, of course, you'll just have to, make your font smaller. I just hand wrote this with a pencil first in my own, what is that called? Cursive. But you can do that however you want in the center there. And that's the last thing we'll do before putting our signature on there. So we have a pretty big palette today, but it's all sort of these nice fall colors. We've got reds, oranges, 2 different greens, and a couple different oranges, and that nice ochre color. So we will get working on that. And the base, we're going to base coat our canvas in Parchment. And so this is FolkArt matte. Parchment is my favorite off-white color that we make. This is a really good sort of neutral off-white. It's really not too yellow. I really like this one. So let's put this over to the side, and we'll bring that back in as we look at different design elements. And here is my plain canvas. I did see something pop up in the chat that some people just have paper. That is fine as well. You can really do this on anything. You could also do it on wood. I happen to just have a blank, I believe we said 10 by 10 canvas. So that's that. And I'm going to go ahead and put my base coat on, and then we'll move on to transferring the image. So if you don't have that printout yet, you still have a little bit of time. And you know what? I just have to grab some scissors. Open up my bottle. Oops. Thank you guys all for joining me tonight. I hope you guys are excited to do some fall crafting. We have the holidays coming up. This would be a perfect thing to have for Thanksgiving. You could even hang this on your door. Right. Oops. All right, and I'm just going to grab one big brush to do my base coating with. It doesn't really matter what size. This is a 3/4 inch. I could probably go bigger, but I'm going to go with this one. And I'm just going to pick up my parchment. And we're just going to give a nice, not too thick, because you don't want to wait too long for it to dry. And you don't need too much to cover it up. So we're just going to put a base coat on there. And if you do end up hanging this up, you will want to go back and just get the sides of your canvas in this same color. But for now, for time's sake, we'll just do the top. And I do have a hair dryer here. If you have a hair dryer, it does make things a bit easier. You can dry between coats and move on a little bit faster. So if you have one of those and you want to grab it, get it plugged in. And if you feel like chatting, we'd love to hear in the chat where you guys are, what state or country you're painting in. I love hearing how far away you guys are. I am in Atlanta, Georgia. It's about 45 degrees here. It's been a little cold this week, and it's going to continue being cold. So I guess it's officially real fall. All right, I've got a nice coat on there. And I'm going to go ahead and hit this with a hair dryer. I'm sorry for the noise. A single coat will dry up really, really fast. All right, so now we're looking at our transferring our pattern. So this is a hand-drawn pattern that I made, and I've got some transfer paper here. And if you haven't used transfer paper before, you will note that only one side works. One side is the transfer side and one side is not. So you'll want to test it. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a pencil and my transfer paper, and this one actually says on it this side up, so it should be like this. I should be able to see it. I'm just going to draw a little blob on here to test, pull it up, and you can see that it made a mark right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to lay down our transfer paper. I'm actually going to cut this down to size because it's a little unruly. All right, so I've got a piece of transfer paper about the right size. I'm going to lay that down directly onto my canvas, and then I'm on top of it going to put my pattern. And I'm just going to look up at my finished painting and find the right way that it lays. And it looks like it is maybe this way. Yeah, I think this is correct. So it's the long ways portrait way. And it doesn't really matter which way you end up going, but in order to follow along, might make it a little bit easier to get it the same way that I'm going. And then you don't have to tape it down, but I do have some painter's tape here, so I am just going to tape it down to make my life a little easier. And this tape doesn't stick perfectly, so you kind of have to just work with what you've got. All right, so now I have my sandwich. I've got my pattern, my transfer paper, and my canvas underneath. And then I'm just going to take a pencil, and you don't have to use a pencil. You could also use just a something that has a bit of a sharp edge, like a stylus, something like that. And we're just going to trace by pushing down. We're just going to trace the shapes. And it doesn't have to be perfect, and you don't have to have every single detail, because we're going to put in the details as we move along, but you do want the general shapes. And we can always fix things up as we go. And for example, this is a good example of not needing details. On something like this, on the fern, I'm not going to trace out every little leaf. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to do that general stem shape. And those leaves will happen with our paintbrush. So again, here, I'm just going to do the stem shape. And those leaves will happen when we paint. So we're just getting our shapes in here. And this is hand drawn, so there's nothing super perfect about it. Most likely you don't need a ruler. One thing that you can trace if you want it to be super perfect, which might be a good idea, is this center. If you wanted to find something circular that matches in there, you could do that. My original drawing was actually larger than this. And I sized it down, so I don't remember what I used for that center circle. I think it was just a really big pot of paint, maybe. You don't have to push down too hard, but you do want to push down hard enough. And you can check, you can flip up your things and you can see, I'm not sure if you can see that on camera, but I can see a light drawing there. So I know it's working. And again, don't need all the details. You can really just do the stems. And when we reference the finished piece, we'll know what shape each plant needs. So we have a couple different ferns, some mushrooms, and then some little berries. And these type of mushrooms, I don't know if you guys know this, these are amanitas. That's the official name. And the reason I used them in this painting is because they're considered a Christmas mushroom. So all over the world, they're used during Christmas time for decor. And I am not sure if that's because they grow in cold weather or if they just go nicely with Christmas stuff. I'm not sure. Okay, we are getting close. One more stem to draw. All right, I think that was it. And then I'm just going to go around and trace my circle. All right. I'm going to tape our tape off. All this to the side. And I'm going to lift this up. Looks like you guys can see that, a little bit of a sketch on there. And the nice thing about this transfer paper is that it is erasable. So for example, right here, I've got a little line. I don't know where that came from. I must have hit it with my fingernail. And I can just erase that right off. And of course, at the end of your painting, you can come back and do touch-ups with your parchment, which was our off-white. All right. So I'm going to keep my painting nearby. And I believe on the listing, I had you guys, I put a 4-pack of detailed brushes. I do have a 10-pack here, which I believe is very similar. Shouldn't be too much in here that you guys don't have. And of course, you can use all of your detail brushes. We're going to be working fairly small today. I just thought I'd grab a brand new pack. So it looks like my smallest brush here is a 10, oh gosh, a 10 over 0 round. That's my smallest. Yeah, so it looks like I just have 2 of each. So this should be about the same as the 4-pack if you guys purchase that. And then I've got 2 little square brushes here, which I do love, and some liner brushes. And those liner brushes is what we will use when we do our hand lettering. All right, so it doesn't really matter where we start because it's round. So I think let's go in and kind of get our color blocking in. So we'll start doing general shapes, get some color in, and then we'll go back as things dry. I'm gonna get my 2 oranges. So I have pumpkin and tangerine. I'm gonna put that on my plate. And I'm gonna go ahead and take the darker of the 2, which I said was what, pumpkin? Yes, pumpkin. And I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna do the orange rind using my 4 flat. You could use your 2 flat as well, which I'm going to switch to my 2 flat. That 10 was a little too big. Okay, so with our 2 flat, we're just going to go around and make that orange rind. And we'll do that on all 3. I'm just going to spin my canvas a little bit. And don't worry too much about going over your orange pieces inside because we will paint those next. So we'll paint right over our orange rind, but we want to get that outer edge done to kind of give us a border. This would be a fun painting to do on a round canvas as well. Sometimes you can find funny shaped canvases at the store. I always wonder what people paint on them. I mean, round isn't that funny, but it is hard to know what to paint on other shapes. This one would be good on a round one. All right, so I've got my 3 rinds there. We'll let that sit for a second. Let's grab some of our red, our Cardinal red. This is a nice, deep, very autumn red. And I'm just going to rinse off my 2 flat. That's the one I was just using. I'm just rinsing it off, drying it off on my paper towels, and picking up a little bit of that Cardinal red. And I'm just going to fill in the whole mushroom cap, not the underneath, but the top that shows. And we have 3 mushrooms on here, so we're going to go ahead and repeat that same thing on all 3. And I hope you guys don't mind that I move my canvas around. When it gets to something where we need to know where we are on the canvas, I'll stop and make sure we coordinate that. But for now, we're just filling in our shapes. I think it's okay to flip around. And you are welcome to do the same thing. You should always move your canvas instead of moving yourself. That's something I've always been told. Keep your arms and hands and fingers comfortable and make your canvas uncomfortable, if that makes sense. These reds and oranges are already so pretty together. Such a great little color combo we're working with tonight. All right, I've got all three of my mushroom caps. I'm gonna rinse out that brush. I'm probably gonna use it quite a bit. All right, and let's put in a couple of stems. And I'm gonna use my coffee latte for this. This is a, let's say maybe a medium to light brown. You can definitely use a darker brown. And I'm going to grab one of my smaller brushes. Let's start with that 10/0. This may be too small, but let's try it out. Just going to pick up some of that brown. And it looks like our curled ferns have a brown stem. So and we have 3 of those, so we'll do those. So I'm going to start in the center and sort of drag my brush around into that spiral shape. Pick up a little more paint. You should be able to drag that along. And create that nice little spiral. There we go, we've got one done. And if you're having problems when you're working this small, if your brushes are catching a lot and you're not getting smooth lines, you can put a tiny bit of water in your paint to get a bit of a smoother drag. I'm not having too many problems, but if you are, sometimes, you know, as your paint ages, it can get a little thicker. So if you do need to water it down a tiny bit, or even just wet your brush, that can sometimes help. Okay, all 3 of my spiral stems are done. And then it looks like our, let's see, the ferns that are slightly curved, it looks like we have 2 of them. Let me show you on the painted. These guys right here, this one and this one with the dark, oh no, I'm sorry, we do have 3. These also have a brown stem, so we're going to do those next. these ones that kind of look like a feather. And those ones are very easy. It's just a curved line. Well, you know, that's funny. I must have added a third because on the, let's see, where should we add a third? Because on the finished painting, I have 3, but on the, no, I'm just confused. Let's look at it here. What am I doing? I must have just missed a, I missed a stem when I was transferring my thing. Sorry,
And then
bear with
Tanisha, when
me.
you figure that out,
Yes.
if you wouldn't mind holding up kind of the progress that you've made.
Sure. I can do that once I figure this out. Okay, I think I've got it. So I think that it goes this way, and we are looking at, oh yes, that was the little line that I erased. I thought it was a mistake. It was not a mistake. All right, so this is the progress I've made so far. So we have stems, orange peel, orange rind, I guess, and mushroom caps so far. And this is the last little brown stem that I accidentally erased there. So I'm just going to put that back in and paint that in. Okay. And then it looks like the rest of the stems are going to be a dark green. So I'm going to wash off my brush. Now I'm going to grab the dark green. This is my favorite dark green that we have. This is called Thicket. This is a great forest green, especially this time of year. This is a really nice color. So again, I'm going to stick with my tiniest little brush here. Pick some of that up, and we're going to go ahead and do the rest of the stems. Notwithstanding, we're not doing the mushroom stems. That's going to be in our lighter sort of beige color. Oops. And we're just going in and creating these teeny tiny lines. All these nice little plants. And if you get a little bit wiggly, your hands shake a little bit, no big deal, because the nice thing is that this is hand drawn, hand painted, made by you. And because it's nature, none of these things would be perfect and straight in real life. They would be bumpy and knobby and funny and curly. So you do not have to worry about being super straight or anything like that. And in my opinion, the bits that make it look like it was done by hand are always the best bits. Especially if it's a gift. So then you can see the time and the effort that went into it. And of course, we'll go back through in the end and fix up some of the little bits that need fixing. All right, that was all my stems. Okay, before our paint dries up that we already poured, let's go back to the oranges. I'm gonna work with my tangerine now, and we're gonna go in, and now I think we can go back to that bigger, which one was it? We were going to try our 4 flat, but any round or flat smallish brush will do. A filbert will also work. Filbert would be great. Actually, I don't have one here. But we're going to pick up that lighter orange, and we're just really going to fill in our oranges, except for that little half circle at the very edge of the orange. That's the only part we're not going to fill in, because we're actually going to go back in with our yellow ochre and fill that in. For now, we're just going to fill in that shape, not worrying about details yet. We'll go back in and add those details once that's dry. You're going to do the same thing to all 3 of your oranges. And you should still be able to see your transferred sketch underneath here. It's getting a little bit covered up, but you can still see it a little bit. So we'll still be able to get those little orange segment shapes. All right. My oranges are filled in. I'm going to go back to my smaller square. This is 2 flat. And let's fill in some of these larger leaves and the little leaves, the ones that are not ferns is what I'm saying. And I'm going to use Mossy Meadow, which is a really, really nice light green. It's a great color. You can tell that I'm a color person by how much I'm fawning over these colors. Okay, so I'm just picking up a little bit of my Mossy Meadow and filling in these teardrop shaped leaves. And you can see the way I did it was I have a little bit of the stem color poking through the bottom of that leaf shape, which is actually perfect. Let me see if I can show you that. So if you see here, the leaf started a little bit down onto the stem. So a little bit of that stem pokes through. You can see a little bit of that color. So we're just going to keep doing that. You can use a round brush on this too to get those corners really well. I'm partial to flat brushes, but you don't have to be. You know, this would be a good gift for a new homeowner. Or a good wedding gift with their new last name. You could do this for a lot of things. A baby gift for a woodland themed nursery. Okay, so I've got those bigger leaves done. And I'm going to go back to my smaller, let's see, actually, let's try out one of our thin liner brushes. This is a 1 round. And I'm going to pick up that same Mossy Meadow, that same light green. And we're going to do these smaller leaves that are on the stems that look more skeleton-y. I can't think of what that word is. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to push my brush down and then pick it up. And it should make a leaf shape. So that's sort of your teardrop method. And I'll hold this up in a second. So you push your brush down so it's sort of like perpendicular, and then you lift it back up. And it gives you this teardrop shape. And so we're going to continue that on all of those. And some of them may not come out as big or bigger than what you traced, and that's fine. We'll touch that up or erase it as we go. But you're just going to want to put one of those little teardrops on every stem end. And depending on your brush, these may come out, you know, bigger or smaller, and that's fine. Just like nature, sometimes things are bigger and sometimes things are smaller. And I believe that brush stroke is called a teardrop. But when you're using this brush, it's a little more like an oval. I'm not getting a real sharp end, which is fine. All right, so I put my little ovals on. And I'd like to, while my red is still fresh on my plate, I'm going to go back in and put a second coat on these mushroom caps. If you've noticed in your painting adventures, red almost always needs a second coat. You want that nice rich color to come through. So a second coat is always a good idea. Okay, and I'll hold it up showing you progress so far. So we are getting there. All right, let's take a little break from working with the bristle end of our brush, and I'm going to show you a little trick with the blunt end of our brush. And this is to make the little berries, the little piles of berries that you see around. And you may not have transferred that with your transfer paper, and that's fine. We're just going to go around and make those little berries with our blunt end. And so what I mean is I'm just going to take the end that does not have bristles, and I'm just going to dip it in my red paint. So you can see hopefully that that's got a little bit of red paint on it. And then I'm just going to go through and I'm going to find where my berries were supposed to go. I've got some next to this mushroom here. And I'm just going to make a little pile of berries. You may need to reload your, I don't want to call it a brush. Reload your blunt end. And you can see it kind of just creates sort of perfect little circles. And depending on how hard and long you push, you can make different different sizes of dots. If you sort of barely just touch your canvas, you can make a teeny tiny dot. And then if you press down on it, it makes it the biggest size dot that your tool will allow. And it is much, much easier to make berries this way than trying to paint little tiny circles, for sure. All right, I don't know if I got all of them, but that's okay. If we need to fill in any spots later, we can do that. All right, let's see what's next. Why don't we do the body, the stem and underneath of our mushroom, which we are using Camel, which is a, I would call this maybe a beige. I'm going to go back to my smallest square brush, or flat brush, sorry. And that was my 2 flat. I'm just going to pick up some of that Camel. And let's go ahead and we'll do the full the full stem and underneath the cap. And then once that dries, we're going to go back through and darken up underneath the cap so that it's in shadow or looks a little more three-dimensional. But for now, we're just going to do the whole underneath in that one color.
And as you're doing that, Tanisha, do
Mhm.
you have your original example there where some people wanted to reference it?
Yes, and I'm sorry it doesn't fit in the frame, but this is the
Perfect.
original. I'll hold it up for a minute there. So far, we've got a lot of the color blocking in, but we have not gone in and added the fern leaves, and we have not done sort of the depth for the oranges and mushrooms. So that'll be the next steps. And I'll leave that, I'll try to keep that in frame. All right. So let's work on our fern leaves here. So for the ferns, we have some of the, so the ones that are sort of feathery, that one's the dark green. We already have that on our plate, so let's do that one. And I'm going to try working with my one round again. That's this one, sort of a liner brush. And I'm going to pick up that Thicket, which is our dark green. And we're going to do the same type of stroke that we did for the smaller leaves, but we're going to make it longer. So let's see, where can I start? Let's put this in. All right, so now this is in the same direction as the one on top. So I'm going to start with this one on the bottom, so I don't have to turn my canvas just yet. And we're going to start, I guess we'll start on the bottom. And I'm just going to press down, pull, and pull up. That wasn't a very good example. Let me get away from the mushroom so I can show you a little better. So up here, we're going to push down, pull, and pull up. And these are very gestural marks on here. If you look closely, you can see that they are not perfect, right? You can see where we're pulling off and the paint is lessening, and that's kind of the look that we want. And I feel like, you know, I'm going to get some, my paint's getting a little hard right here. I'm just going to pour a little bit more out. My brush is a little bit wet, which should help. Okay. So we're going to pull and pull up. Well, now it's too wet. I swear I did this well. I'm just using a little piece of paper towel to, I got a little bit of water on there. Okay. Here we go. So I've got a good amount of paint on my brush, which helps. And again, you're making sort of an elongated teardrop. And I am going to start moving my canvas around in a second. It's a little bit hard to get it behind the mushroom there, but I think you guys can get it. And you're just going to repeat on the other side of the stem. And you kind of want to curve around with your stem. So you're going to start to see the leaves going in the other direction because you're curving with your stem. We'll go to our next one. Probably could have used a little bit of a thinner brush. That's okay. We are getting the technique look that we want. And again, I'm just going to curve around with my stem. Adding these has already added a fuller look to this painting, which is nice. Sort of drawing our eyes around the circle. All right, so I've got all three of those done. That's what it's looking like right now. And now we're going to do our true ferns, our swirl ferns there. And I'm going to mix a color because I want more of that sort of true spring green. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my yellow ochre, which we haven't used yet. And I'm going to mix it up with some of the green. So I'm going to try using some of the dark green, which is a more true green, and some of that yellow. Maybe get a touch of the parchment. So now we've got more of a sort of a yellowish light green. A little more yellow in there. I think that's about perfect. All right, and now for this one, we do want our leaves to be small because we want to kind of pack a lot in there. So I'm going to start with, I'm going to go back to my 10-0 liner. We'll try that out. Just going to load my brush. Let's see. And again, sort of the same technique. We're going to push and drag. These ones look a little more wiggly, so I'm gonna give it a little bit of a zhuzh at the end of each stroke to kind of give that like this leaf has been curled up at some point look. And we can kind of play around with that. I'm gonna start at the stem, push down, pull up, and give it a little wiggle. And it looks like, I can already tell you can, if you want to play around with using an even smaller brush, you definitely can do that. And I'm going to follow the outside of the stem first. I think if you're using a smaller brush, you could probably get a little better of a wiggle than what I'm getting. And then as we get to the swirl, you're just going to follow it around and sort of fit as many of those little leaves as you can in there without making it too messy. And then we're going to go back through and do the inside of the stem. And you can, to make it look a little bit different, you can see that I'm doing like thinner, sort of a thinner wiggly line on the inside. And again, that's sort of to show that this plant was curled up, slowly unfurled. And so those inner leaves might be a little more packed in than they would be on the outside. And when you get to the inside of this swirl, you're going to have less room, and that's fine. You just fit a couple little lines in there. And that's what my first fern looks like there. And we're going to just do that on all three. And as long as you sort of follow the curve, you should get the result that you want. And when you're going past another shape that you don't want to go on top of, you're kind of just going to fake it a little bit and make it look like your leaf is going behind that orange peel or whatever it is. All right, I'm moving on to my third. Painting's starting to look very botanical. We're definitely getting close. All right. So that's as far as I've gotten there. Now let's put some detail in those oranges. So I'm going to stick to, let's see. I need something that small. What do we want? I'm gonna go to my 0 round. And my paint's dried up a little bit, so I'm gonna put some more pumpkin on my plate. That's our darker orange. And I'm gonna pick that up on my brush. And now we're gonna go ahead and basically we're lining our orange segments, but we're only lining where it touches and goes down from the orange rind. So basically we're continuing this darker orange down into our orange segments. And when I do that, what I'm doing is I'm rounding the orange segment at the top where it touches the rind. And I'll hold this up in a second to kind of show you what I'm talking about here. But I'm basically rounding the tops of those orange segments so that it looks like when you open or when you slice an orange and you can see those little segments perfectly separated. We're kind of giving that idea without bringing the line all the way down to the pit. So let me hold that up. So you can see here where I'm bringing the darker orange down through each slice, but not all the way to the center. And you can see that at each top, I round it a little bit to give that shape. So we're just going to continue doing that. And while you're in here, you can, with a smaller brush, you can fix up any issues that you had on your orange rind. And then, still working on the oranges, we are going to take a little bit of this darker orange, and I'm just going to water it down a little bit. Not a ton, just sort of getting it a little lighter, a little flowier. And I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to pull up from the center of my orange. So here's my center of my orange, and I'm just going to pull up a tiny bit and make little marks all throughout to just show a little bit of texture there. And we're not putting down a ton of color because it's watered down. We're just kind of giving a little bit of texture to those orange slices. And then while I have my ochre out, we can go ahead and fill in those center seeds. I don't know what to call that. I'm going to throw a little bit of my parchment in my ochre to lighten it up. I'm just going to fill in those centers. Okay. Now let's go back to our mushrooms. So let's see, let me get my canvas the right way. There we go. So now we've got our little mushrooms and we want to do a couple things here. We want to put a little bit of a shadow in it. So I'm going to use my Camel, which I already have. That's what we did the original one from. And I'm going to mix it in with our darker brown, just a tiny bit, to make a shadowed color. All right. I'm going to go back to one of my flat brushes. Let's dry it off. Now I pick up some of that mixed color, which looks like this, sort of a mushroomy brown. And I'm just going to, get the edges underneath. I hope this makes sense. Not over the whole stem, but I am going to put a little bit of a shadow on that stem. So you're kind of making like the underneath of a hat on each little mushroom cap. And you can go back in and fuss with this, and if your color's not perfect for a shadow, you can add another layer to it. But we just want sort of a barely there difference between the stem and the shadowed area. So that's what I'm looking at so far. And then we're going to do our dots. And so for our dots, we're going to go back to Parchment, which was our off-white. I'm going to get a new blob because mine's sort of dried up. And let's use maybe a liner. We're going to use my one round. Pick up some of that Parchment. And when you're doing these, you don't need to follow the picture exactly. You can put these dots in just where you think they look cute. And what I like to do is I like to do some half dots and 3/4 dots, so like half circles. So, so that you can tell that they're going all the way around the mushroom. And then I go in and add just smaller dots. So if you can see that little mushroom there. And sort of the fun thing about using Parchment for the dots is that it does blend in with the background because we base coated in Parchment, which I think is cute. But if you don't love that, you can brighten up your dots with white. Okay, let's see, are we missing anything? I think we are ready to do some hand lettering. So while you guys are, I'll give you a second to sort of finish up some things in case you're running a little bit behind. And I'm just going to go through and erase some of my lines where my paint didn't quite make it. And you can erase your circle as well, because you don't need it. The items on your circle create the illusion of a circle. I'm just going to go back through real quick and touch up a couple spots. So I'm just using my parchment to kind of go through around leaves where maybe I got a little smudgy, or somewhere where my dirty hand hit. Just touching those up. All right. So now to me, this is the hardest part. Doing lettering to me is difficult. Now, of course, your last name is most likely going to be different than mine, but I'm going to go ahead and do Jones again. And basically, I just did it in cursive. So I'm just going to do my big J. All right, and that's not perfect, but it's probably about as good as it's going to get. I am not a lettering person. And then you're going to want to use your paint. I used our dark green, which is Thicket. I'm going to go ahead and put another blob on here so we have good fresh paint. And for this one, you're going to want to use your teeniest, tiniest to start with. So I'm going to go back to my 10/0, which is the teeniest, tiniest. It actually says, this says spotter on it. So it's not even a liner. It's not even a detail. It's called a spotter. I'm going to load up my brush. I'm just going to do my best on this. And when I did my first one, I was a little disappointed at how thick I did the lettering. So I am going to go a bit thinner this time. And you, of course, are welcome to customize your center in any way that you like. Hopefully, if you have a super long name, you're able to fit it in there. I used to have a super long name before I got married. Now I have an easy last name. And of course, if you don't know cursive or any sort of script, you do not have to do it in cursive. You can see I'm just going back over some of the lines that came out a little too thin. Just rounding up my letters. And if I was a real script person, I'm sure there would be parts where you should make them fatter, but like I said, that's not my forte. All right, I think that looks good. And then of course you always want to sign your painting. And I don't have a pen here, so I'm going to have to do it with my little brush. And I'm going to go back in with my Thicket to do that. And I'm just going to put in my first initial and my last name. And signing your paintings is something that you get to customize. You get to pick what your signature is going to say and what it's going to look like. All right. I think I am finished. And of course, you are more than welcome after this class to continue to go back through, make little changes, put a second coat anywhere that you may find is a little thin or you want to, you know, fix it up. And if you guys want to hold up your paintings to your camera, I would love to see them. And if you want to share them on social media, oh, everybody's looks great. Very nice. Very nice. Oh, I love the person who did it on paper. I love how you did your background. Very nice, guys. So if you want to share them on social media, you're welcome to find us anywhere using the hashtag plaid crafts. And we do look at them. We love to see them. And, you know, thank you guys so much for joining me tonight. I hope you had fun making this little customizable wreath. I know I did. So I will see you guys next time.